So I'm doing a renovation on this bathroom, and yes, there's a lot of carpet in Georgia that they put in bathrooms. I don't know why. As you'll notice over here, there's quite a bit of staining through the years. A lot of this is coming up through the floor against the baseboard, but some of it could be just simply cleaning products, makeup, rust it looks like, or maybe that's just makeup too. Wine, anything will get down in here and spill. Obviously, we have some water issues going on there with regard to the shower, but that's not why I'm making this video. That I don't like builder's grade tile, and when I mention builder's grade tile, it could be, in this case we have a 6x6, but it could be a 4x4, but it's just basically a white ceramic tile. And the builders, and by the way, this is 20 years old, so 20 years later this stuff is just falling apart. You can tell where they you know, it's cracked and pulled apart, and they've come in there with caulking over the years and tried to rectify some of those issues, but you'll never rectify them because it's there, you know. I've got other videos where I explain, here's we got a crack going on, where I explain about builder's grade tile. Builder's grade tile has unsanded grout. Unsanded grout is powdery. It's usually mixed very, very thin by the guy who comes in the grout after the shower is built, because he's just slopping it on there and going next door to the next house and slopping it on there, and he doesn't really care if it lasts or not. Nobody comes in when they buy a house. I guarantee 20 years ago they didn't come in and seal any of this grout. So not only do you have a powder grout that's not very deep, because this tile isn't very deep, but you know, look here, 20 years later I can still scratch it off on my fingernail. So it's not a good application. There's nothing that is here that is meant to last. It looks pretty, it looks nice when you first come in and buy it and it's brand new, but you know, 20 years later you have a lot of issues, and some of those issues are apparent because obviously mold and mildew has gotten up under there. Now the reason for that, and when people ask me that question, there is no way to ascertain based on experience. I could probably say that this curb wasn't done properly, which again doesn't matter at the very beginning phase of building a house. Now they have a year warranty, so 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 years down the road things fall apart, they don't really care. They put it together just to sell the house. So did they wrap the curb? I don't know. Did they waterproof it? Almost guarantee they didn't. Did they wrap it fully? Did they wrap it with sheetrock instead of Durarock? I don't know. Did they set the wallboard, whatever it is, inside of the pan, and that wicked up water and came around the curb and caused you problems later? I don't know that either. So the dissection of a shower is usually where I find all this stuff out. But regardless and despite that, this doesn't last. So this is the surface level, and then we have a surface level crack, which my best guess, this pan is very, very thin. Coming up to the drain area, it's probably not any much deeper than going over this perimeter area. The pan mortar was probably mixed pretty runny. Probably didn't have enough time to set up before they put the tile on, and you know, for whatever a combination, either 1 or 2 or 3 of those reasons, the pan is cracked. So when the pan cracks, it transfers through to the tile, and that's why you have this crack going across here and this crack going across here. And I almost guarantee when I do the tear out, well, I already know for a fact that this pan is saturated with water. My belief is, if you waterproof the surface, which they're not going to do, and then put the tile on, you might be okay with builder's grade tile, but why on earth would you ever put a 4x4 ceramic tile with non-sanded grout down here too? There's non-sanded grout down here on a shower floor. They do it time and time and time and again. There's a lot of codes that are supposed to protect you as a homeowner, and these codes run the gamut from, you know, make sure your pan liner is 3 inches above your curb, make sure that your pan liner is wrapped around it, make sure you do pre-slope if that's code in your municipality. There's a lot of codes that are meant to prevent problems from happening. But the biggest problem that I see time and time and again, especially with showers that are, say, older than about, well, even 3 or 4 years, but definitely going back 20 years, this was just standard. This is standard operating procedure, SOP, for builders to do this, and it boggles my mind, because this, from day one when they set this pan and they decided to go with this tile, there was a time clock ticking, and it was a very short fuse on that clock. You know, here I am 20 years later, and this probably started much sooner. This house was built, I think they said 21 years ago. These problems started surfacing probably about 5 or 6 years into the build. Interesting. So I started to do the tear out on this shower, and as I started to do the tear out, there's a rail that goes through the glass that's on here. So as I pulled out the rail, you can see where the screw was at. A bunch of tile came out with it because this sheetrock is saturated with water. It is said nowadays that you should not use sheetrock. 20 years ago, they did quite a bit of it. This is what's called a mud cap. So they have, the mud cap hides the edge of 2 pieces of sheetrock. There's one right here, which you can see is clearly molded. I bet my hammer will go right through it very easily. That piece, and then the second piece goes on top of it. So in order to hide those 2 pieces, they put the mud cap tile on there. And that's pretty typical of the way things were back in the 80s and 90s, and leading into 2000s. We started using Durock. Why? Because people started seeing the sheetrock get moldy and mildew and feed off of all the water saturation that inevitably gets in there when it's builder's grade tile with non-sanded grout. When things are falling apart because it's non-sanded grout, see how it just pops out? Yes, then that gets wet. Probably, most likely, they stuck this sheetrock inside of the shower pan also, and that wicked up water, which also contributed to the problem, although this would be problematic to begin with. My take on it is, no matter what backer board you use, you could use 9-inch concrete block, but you're not going to stick tile straight to that, because you still have the possibility of water seeping through and getting into that concrete block. And as many of you know, concrete, i.e. cement, will still mold and mildew. Not to the extent that this does, but obviously when there's a waterproofer on here, had they put waterproofer on here, then the fact that they use builder's grade tile with non-sanded grout probably doesn't matter, but I still wouldn't risk it. And we're using larger format tile now anyway with a waterproofer. No matter what the waterproofer, it could be a topical membrane as far as Redguard or Aqua Defense or Curdy Schluter. Any of that stuff is going to work as a waterproofer. But that's the whole point. So don't get fixated on what you see here. This is the reason people get fixated. I have to use Durock. I have to use Wonderboard. I have to use, look at this, it's just crumbling down. Why? Because it got wet. So all of those material that you think will not get wet will still get wet, and although it won't fall apart, you'll still have black mold and mildew and all that stuff if you do the shower in the same fashion that they did before. We're not doing that. We're using a larger format tile, we're using sanded grout, we're waterproofing everything, and we're sealing everything. Those 4 steps alone are going to guarantee that what this is doesn't matter. It's irrelevant what this is. Don't get fixated on HardieBacker and Durock and all that stuff, because it'll still get wet. It won't fall apart like this, but it'll still get wet. You're not helping anything by using a stronger backer board. You're helping by doing those 4 steps that I just mentioned. Anyway, I tend to talk a lot. I do that for those that are that are not hearing impaired. What's the proper term? That don't get it. That for some reason they don't use common sense. Watch this. They don't use common sense and think about how things are put together. I have to break it down, and I know it aggravates a lot of my subscribers, because they're like, oh crap, here he goes again, going on for 15-20 minutes on one subject to get to the point. Well, I have to go on and on for those that don't get it. Look at that. Look how this whole thing just comes up as one unit. And I'm going to show you why that happened. Look at that. Wow, look at that. Holy moly, that's a first. Holy moly. Oh my God. So let me This is, oh my God, look at that. It's still leaking. Look at that, all that water pouring out. Oh my God, I have rarely come on a site like this. This bottom rail of the shower door is actually screwed in. Sorry, the bottom rail is caulked in and the walls are screwed in. As you saw just a little while ago, the screw popped right out. Why? Because it wasn't really onto anything that mattered. That 2x4 more than likely is rotted out, as is this 2x4. Look at that. That's just horrible. I mean, it's slippery, it's wet, and as I suspected, this is interesting. They use Dent Shield. This is a waterproofing. Dent Shield has a waterproofer that's already on it, and clearly if I drop some water on top of this surface, because it feels like a plastic, that water would not get on top of that. But the problem is that they did everything wrong after that. So they put nails in here, which the nail heads have long ago. Look at I just pulled the nail out. I feel like Superman. I just pulled the nail out with my finger. The nails have long since deceased. They're dead. They're gone. They're just disappeared altogether. I think there's one left. Nope. So all the nail heads are gone. Well, they're not quite gone. Some of them are still attached to the sheetrock. When I say sheetrock, Dent Shield is a good product. Don't get me wrong. I think this is an absolutely wonderful product as a wall board. As a wall board to put on the walls, you see. I would never ever use Dent Shield, a gypsum product, for the curb. I would never use it for a bench. I would never use it for a knee wall. Those things I'm very adamant about using Durarock. The reason I use Durarock on this is because, again, I can butter the whole thing. If you go to some of my videos, you'll see how I build my curbs. I can butter the whole thing with mortar afterward, then I can red guard it, and more importantly, I bet I can pull this off. And more importantly, my wallboard, which they didn't do, my wallboard actually sets off of the shower pan, so there's no contact to be made, and I know there's contact here. So the contact ended up going through here and just wicking up this, making this weak, and then the whole structure got weak. Why? It's not because they put nails. See, this is pan liner, although they scabbed it in. They didn't wrap it, but you know, you can put nails, you can put screws in here to hold it in, to hold in your Durarock. And in this case, as I said, it's not Durarock, but you can do that and then butter the tops of them and then waterproof it with Red Guard. You're good to go. Don't get freaked out and don't let somebody tell you that you can't go through your pan liner on the curb, because it's almost impossible not to. The way that I build showers, it's impossible not to. But you're negating all those holes by the fact that you're buttering your curb. You're not setting your wallboard down to your pan, and more importantly, you're waterproofing the whole thing 2 or 3 times with Red Guard. There's no way water will ever get in the way it has gotten into this. This is a total mess. This is, look at that, look at that. This, look how wet that is. That's just crazy. 2 layers of sheetrock on the outside of the curb. Ooh, look at how easy that comes off. Just saturated with water. Curb is absolutely ruined. It looks like it's been through a fire. This is absolutely crazy. This is about as worse. I mean, I do a lot of tear outs. Don't get me wrong, I've seen stuff like this before, but not quite as bad as this. This is really I'm doing this with one hand. That's why I'm laughing. I used to using 2 hands for a tear out, and the only good thing about this is it's so easy to take out. That's just horrible. That's just horrible. Look at that. That's disgusting. Okay. I think the only dry spot. Ooh, we got a full nail out. No, that's not dry either. So there's no dry spot. Except maybe in the back. No, that's wet. saturated. All sheetrock. And again, when I say sheetrock, let me reiterate. This stuff is a good product. I like Dent Shield, but it should not be used on a curb. And even if it was used on a curb, it should not be embedded into the pan, which I'm sure they did, without a doubt. And then even if they did that, they didn't butter anything, so you have all these seams that were open to water. In other words, you know, the top, the vertical meets the horizontal. Nothing's covered there, nothing's waterproofed. You know, nothing was slanted, by the way. When I took this out, I didn't even mention that. The curb was like this, and it wasn't slanted in. Plus, look how they did the tile. And this is always Achilles' heel too. They always put this rail right on a grout line. And this grout is weak anyway to begin with. There's no slope on it whatsoever. And all these pieces, I mean, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of very weak grout lines along this whole curb. So this was a major contributor, as was not putting your wallboard into your pan. As was not using gypsum product to build your curb. What was a curb? This is horrible. This is going to continue back into the wall over there, no doubt. There's going to be a lot of wood rot on those bottom studs that are wrapped around the wall. In fact, I guarantee it. I also guarantee a very, very wet shower pan. I stated a few minutes ago that I have run into this before. But I'm going to back off of that statement just a tad. I've run into this particular damage maybe once or twice. This is really, really bad. This is really a horrible, horrible saturated curb that I don't even know how it stood the test of time, honestly. It is so bad that all of that wetness and rot transferred down to the floor. The subfloor is completely rotted out around this area. Not too bad here yet, but it's rotted out along there too. No doubt when I take this out, there's going to be a big section of subfloor that has to be replaced. This is pretty bad. This is how bad it can get. This is builder's grade, by the way. When they build houses and subdivisions, this is not surprising to me and people who do this type of work. We see this all the time. We see shortcuts on the pan liner. You know, we see the construction method makes no sense. How are you going to put drywall as your backer to wrap the curb? And you don't waterproof anything, and you set your wallboard, which is drywall, into your pan and expect that it's going to last. There's no expectation that it'll last. That's the point. This is very typical builder's grade, but that it went on this long is what you end up with. And a lot of times there's no telltale signs. I mean, obviously they had a cracked pan and they had some cracked grout going on their curb and stuff like that. But I have torn out. Look how wet this is. Look how wet that is. I have torn out showers before. That this is so wet. I can't even take this pan material out without grabbing my shop vac, because all of this water that's in the pan has to go somewhere. I have taken out showers before, as I so rudely interrupted myself. I lost my train of thought. That were this bad, but not to the point where the bottom wood is rotted out. This is exactly the way I thought it was done. The sheetrock, which is a big mistake, sat literally right on the shower pan material, and of course when the shower pan material got wet, so did the sheetrock, and then it wicked up. This shouldn't be sheetrock, but even if it were, they should have set it above the pan material and then slid their tile up underneath. The way I've approached my videos showing that process, here is a leftover this is a leftover backing of, look here, Dent Shield. I can't get to it, but this gray material, that's the other side of the Dent Shield. Because that's the other side of the Dent Shield, obviously, you already know they stuck their dent shield, which is gypsum, inside of the pan and then poured the pan. It's so idiotic. I don't understand why people continue to do that. I see it all over YouTube all the time. And it's messy, but whew, look at that. So this thing is so saturated with water that each one of these sections, I'll have 4 of these sections to take out. I have to take out immediately downstairs. This thing will drain out water from it for the next couple of hours, and so I got to get it downstairs right away. This is the end result. I had to take those 4 sections out very quickly, and I had to get my shop vac and wet back up all the water. This is really destroyed. This has affected the outside of the shower. This has affected the walls. Look at the walls falling apart. It's one of the worst jobs as far as the damage that I've seen. So normally I'm doing a fix on. Somebody calls in, they have a shower pan leak, and they want to know what the process is. This would be the process. You have a shower pan leak, which is never the shower pan, almost never the shower pan. It's residual issues, but regardless, there's no way to ascertain where your leak is coming from. It's almost never the drain, although most people will call a plumber first because they think it's a P-trap or somewhere up around the drain and they can fix it. But you can't. So even if it were a pan liner or a residual issue, you cannot know what you don't know. You literally have to kill the patient to find the disease, as I say. So once you've gotten this far, and actually probably about 12 inches up where that tile is falling down, I would take out that row of tile all the way around and then leave the rest of the shower in place and then take out all this material and find out where the problem was. But at that point it's a moot issue because you've already killed the patient, so it doesn't matter, except for your own knowledge. In this case, that's not what's going on, but I'm surprised it's not, because look at this subfloor. This subfloor is just rotted through. And this is not OSB, this is plywood. And the fact that this plywood is rotted through and through tells me this has been going on a long time, and I'm surprised, I'm shocked that they never had any water leaking downstairs. And it wasn't the shower pan, although there was a lot of things that contributed, including the cuts on the corners and stuff, but this is a mess. So the wallboard, as I told you before, 2 layers of sheetrock, it's going to come out really easy. See all that blackness? All that blackness back there is just years and years of that sheetrock soaking up water. And that's how bad it can be. To the point where I'm barely doing anything. I got my hammer out, but I'm not banging on it. I'm just pushing and pulling the stuff out. I got some pipes back there, probably the water supply. Yeah, this is how bad it can get. This is why people, honestly, this is why people are so scared to do green board or any type of gypsum product, because they see stuff like this. But you know, you also have to understand something. When they built this, all this mold, when they built this, they just did it wrong. I could build a shower at a 1/2 inch cardboard, and I guarantee I won't have these problems 20, 30, 40 years later. 1/2 inch cardboard, 1 layer, instead of this 2 layers of drywall, which is falling apart, like literally. And there's the rot that I was telling you I probably have on my studs too. I knew I'd have rot down there. So don't get fixated that because I'm able to pull this out so easy and that's so wet and wrong and mold and mildew and it comes off so easy. Don't get fixated that because you use a stronger backer board that you're not going to have these problems. You'll have these problems. They just won't rear their ugly head until you have a leak. Yes, you'll have mold and mildew on all of that board that you're proposing to put in there, so you're not ending up with, you know, a weak backer board. You'll have a strong backer board, but you'll still have these problems if you don't put it together right. That's why I said 1/2-inch cardboard I could build my whole shower out of, and I would put it up against any other shower with any other material for the length of time that that shower's up, without question, without reservation. Why? Because the build back process, the prep, has everything to do with something lasting, not the material you use. The material is irrelevant, except for the waterproofing, of course. But the material is irrelevant insofar as using the proper tile, using the proper grout, sealing the grout, waterproofing everything. You're good to go no matter what you use. Don't get fixated on the material. Get fixated on the process, how the material is put up. And now that all the material is out on the walls, you can clearly see where I was talking about the wood rot. It's not as bad as I thought, but I definitely have wood rot at the bottom of those studs. So once I get all this material out, this pan liner, I will see the extent of it a little better. Another thing too, you see this pan liner, 2 inches, maybe 2.5, and then the rest of it is about 3 inches. So it is literally flush with the curb. The pan liner, although this is the very, very small issue in the scheme of things, but a pan liner should be a minimum of 3 inches above the curb. So this should have been about 6 inches, 5.5, 6 inches up at least. Also, look at all the nails they did below the pan, the pan material. There are obvious rust going on there. A couple more that I found around. It's just a bad job overall. It's a bad job. Never ever meant to last past the year that they warranty houses for. This is builder's grade, folks. This is what you have. If you have white tile in your house, and your house is, you know, in excess of 10, 15, 20 years old, expect not this bad. This is really, really bad. But expect it to go bad. It has a shelf life of about 20 years. 25, 30 years, you could probably get a 35-year-old shower if things were done better. And again, every builder does their things their own way, but this guy, or this builder, this is as bad as it can be. I don't even know, I don't have words for how awful this is. Where do they get these guys? Where do they get these guys to be able to do a shower but cut so many corners? It's beyond me. I don't know. You know, there's no scabbing between the studs, but again, incidental. Those are all incidental issues, but I'm just letting you know it can get this bad, and it can cost you a lot. All this material, all this flooring. Look at that. Holy crap. Look at that. Oh, by the way, this is the back. Look how far this is. So this is the bottom end of where I just took out over here, right? That's the bottom end. Look how far the mold and mildew went up. That's 4 foot. This is a 4-foot piece of sheetrock. So that's 4 foot up that mold and mildew went. This is the front end, and obviously some of the tile came off with the backer here, but you can see clearly that mold and mildew has, black mold has permeated this whole area. It's pretty bad. Sorry. Upside down. Anyway, mold and mildew behind there. I gotta turn my camera. Mold and mildew behind there. So that's the bottom. That's not the bottom, sorry. But anyway, you get the point. This is 4 foot up. 3 foot up is where it stopped finally. It is now 4 days later, and the subfloor all had to be replaced from wall to wall. It was pretty bad. It was actually very awful. And there was no way it was, I mean, it was compromised too much. Plumbed in the shower valve. That's ready to go. It's in the middle now instead of on this wall. Have a niche over there. And I'm ready to pour the pan. And that's what it looks like after. So if you have a builder's grade tile, you have a shower that was built like you saw, you're probably on a time clock. I would do a little searching around, make sure you don't have all that wood rot that had happened before. Not a good thing. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, then subscribe. Hit that button and subscribe. I make nothing off of YouTube, so please be a Patreon member. I'm going to post a link down below to my Patreon account, and you can donate $1, $5, $10, $20 a month. Just pledge that on a monthly basis. That will help me produce more videos and content so that you can watch and learn from my channel. And donate at least $50 if you're going to call. If you're going to call for advice, donate to my PayPal, please. Donate first, and then feel free to call me or email me for advice. Otherwise, business calls only, please.